Yippee-ki-yay, mother. Hello everyone, I'm Sarah from Everyday Starlet. Welcome to my channel. I make videos to inspire you to be the star of your own life. I'm continuing the Christmas editions of my Masculine Feminine Energies film breakdown series with a controversial, is it a Christmas movie, is it not a Christmas movie film, Die Hard. Before we get started, I have tons of videos going in much more detail about the masculine and the feminine energies, but a brief summary: masculine and feminine energies are energies that live within all of us. We all contain both energies, but we all have a core energy that's the one we're most ourselves in. That energy may link up with our gender, it doesn't have to, but it very often does. We can be in wounded or healed versions of either of these energies, and these energies all contain archetypes, and we contain all the archetypes within us that we can tap into whenever we need to. I have a lot of videos about the masculine and the feminine archetypes. And in order to have sexual polarity in a relationship, you need one partner to be in the masculine and one partner to be in the feminine. These opposite energies attract sexually and same energies repel sexually. So let's get into Die Hard. This movie has been so controversial as far as like, is it a Christmas movie? Is it not a Christmas movie? And I have a confession. In all the years that I have heard this debate, I never could really answer that question because I had never seen Die Hard. Yes, I know. I watched it for the very first time to do this breakdown. So these are my initial reactions to the film Die Hard. Saw it for the first time like 2 days ago because I didn't get to film this yesterday. After having watched it, I do understand why so many people think of this as a Christmas movie. Like, Christmas is a huge part of this film. And honestly, if you want to see this as a Christmas movie, this is definitely the most masculine Christmas movie I think probably that has ever been made. This movie just drips with masculinity. It was just like, whew, I got like a contact high from the testosterone when I watched this. Like, so let's dive into this movie. This movie is obviously about John McLean, played by Bruce Willis. And John McLean is a very masculine character. Like, absolutely, like, no question, no doubt, this is a masculine man. He's embodying his masculine energy. It's obviously his core energy. It's where he's at his best self. Like, there is no question about his masculinity. But I want to make a note because I know I'm going to hear it from some guys who are going to be like, oh, so we have to basically take down potential terrorists and save 30 hostages from a building that's about to explode in order to be masculine. No. It's not doing those things that makes him masculine. It's the energy and the qualities that he embodied that made it possible for him to do something like that, that make him masculine. So it's not about what you do per se, it's really about the energy for which you do it in. So for starters, we meet John McLean initially. He's on a plane. We don't really know initially why he's on a plane. He appears to be nervous, and we don't really find out, so to speak, if he's afraid of flying or if he is just nervous about what he's about to be flying into, you know, his situation. But he appears to be a little antsy on the plane, and there's a man sitting beside him who gives him a piece of advice that ends up really defining a huge part of the movie. He tells him that after he flies to like take off his shoes, take off his socks, and actually like dig his feet into like the carpet, I think, of the hotel where he's staying or something like that. He's essentially telling him to ground. Now, grounding is, it's kind of ironic that grounding is actually called something now in the holistic world, but really grounding is when you actually take your feet, ideally you want to put them in like the earth, like in the ground, in the dirt, but obviously if you don't have access to that and you need to do like a rug or a floor or something, you actually stand barefoot on the ground and you feel yourself on the ground. It really helps you to ground yourself, because many people, men and women, are kind of up in the air. We're up in the air, we're kind of all over the place, not even just when you're flying, but like we're literally kind of like up in our heads. We're, you know, not focused. Everything is coming at us at the same time, especially nowadays with so much stimulus coming at us all the time and so many distractions. That can really make people kind of like up in the air, up in their heads. And you actually take the time to, ideally barefoot if you can, actually feel your feet on the ground, your bare feet on the ground. It really can help you get grounded, because that grounded energy is very masculine. Very often I think people mistake this kind of like high energy, you know, all over the place, doing everything all the time, that kind of thing is being masculine. Masculine energy tends to be very grounded. It tends to be very rooted in the earth. I've used this example tons of times, but masculine energy is like the tree with its roots in the earth, and the rest of the world, the feminine, nature, everything around him is in chaos, but he stays rooted in the ground. And that piece of advice actually comes in handy later on in the film, and for most of the film, really. You end up finding out that a limo driver has been sent to pick up John from the airport. Basically, you end up finding out that John has a wife and 2 kids, and they were all living in New York. He's a New York police officer, and his wife ends up getting this really amazing job opportunity in California. She ends up taking the opportunity. She leaves, takes the kids, goes to California, and John insists on staying in New York because, as he puts it, he's a New York cop. So now they're separated and they're kind of in this weird limbo area, and John is now flying out to California to spend Christmas with his family. He doesn't really know at that point if he's gonna stay with his wife, if he's not. He doesn't really know where he stands with her, what their relationship is gonna be. Everything is kind of up in the air for him. Again, he's up in the air, he's up in his head, he doesn't know what's going on. The interesting thing is that obviously his wife's company is very wealthy. She's very high up in the company, and they've obviously sent him a limo. They've basically made arrangements for him to come to the Christmas party that the office is holding. You get the impression that the company is doing all of these things for him and trying to accommodate him in any way. He's very uncomfortable with that. If you notice, the masculine, like a truly masculine man, is going to tend to be uncomfortable with receiving things. The masculine is the giver. The masculine wants to give and provide. So when the masculine is being provided for by somebody who is maybe of higher status in some way, like somebody who maybe has more money, it doesn't have to be about money, but has more money, more power, more something, it's usually going to make him feel very uncomfortable. And that's really, if a man is doing it, it's if a woman is doing it, doesn't matter. It's going to chip away a little bit at the masculine. He's not going to want to be open to receive because the masculine wants to give. A truly masculine man wants to be the one who is providing. And in the initial conversation between John and the limo driver, Argyle, you find out kind of a little bit about John's situation and what's been going on. And it's interesting because Argyle asks him like why he didn't go to California with his wife, and he answered with, well, because I'm a New York cop. There's too many scumbags on the streets of New York. For John and for many masculine men, their job is their purpose. So for him, he is a New York cop. Like, that defines him. It defines who he is as a person. That's very common with the masculine. If they really feel like what they're doing is their true purpose in life, like their true mission in life, like their reason for being here is what they're doing, that will be above everything. It will literally be a part of him. And you get the impression that being a New York cop for John is who he is. That's his purpose. That's his focus. And nothing is going to come between a masculine man and his purpose. Even potentially losing his family, which he clearly doesn't want to do, but he's always gonna choose his passion and purpose first. And I have a lot more information about that, particularly in my Tom and Giselle breakdown. But yeah, the masculine is always going to put his passion and purpose as his #1 priority. The feminine is always going to put family, love, and connection as her #1 priority. And you need to have a masculine and a feminine in the relationship in order to have a relationship work. Now, and this is the part that's going to get controversial, we meet John's wife. Holly is a very masculine woman. Holly is very career driven. She's very purpose driven. She's very ambitious. She's very structured. She is very much in her masculine energy. You get the impression that she really doesn't spend much time with her kids. She has a nanny who you kind of get the impression is the one raising her kids. She is obviously choosing her career path over her family. And yes, that is what John was doing as well. However, you need a masculine and a feminine in a relationship in order to make a relationship work. She's very much in her masculine, he's very much in his masculine. They're just not coming together because they're too masculine, so they're not going to attract sexually. It's just not going to happen. They're going to be repelled by each other. They can still have a lot of love. They share a family together. They have children, so there can still be a lot of love there, but there's not gonna be an attraction. And it's probably not gonna work because at the end of the day, if you have two people that are prioritizing their purpose over their family, it's the family that's gonna lose out. You're also gonna get that clash again when you have one person whose purpose means they have to be in, say, New York City, and the other person whose purpose means they have to be in California. You can't really make a family work that way. And I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate about this. At the end of the day, if you as a woman want to embody the feminine energy in the relationship, you're gonna have to put family and connection and love first. Because if you want a masculine partner, he's gonna put his career, his purpose, his passions, he's gonna put those first. And it's really important as the feminine to be the one to put the family first. And look, if you want to be a career woman, if you want to be, you know, the masculine energy, career woman, boss babe, whatever, and more power to you. But you're not going to be able to maintain a relationship with a masculine man because you're always going to butt heads. And you see it in the conversation. John's, you know, seeing her workspace. Like, he wants to be the masculine. He also realizes that Holly has gone back to her maiden name, which does hurt John because it's another way that she's distancing herself from him, from their relationship, from their family. There's a back and forth where, you know, he obviously wants to have a more traditional relationship and she wants to redefine what their relationship is, and he's not on board. And that's a really common conflict. I feel like movies from the 80s, this movie was from 1988. I mean, these 80s movies were so much about like the working woman, the powerful working woman. I mean, that was kind of supposed to be the vibe, and that men were supposed to just, you know, step up and get on board with this. But in most cases, this whole situation is a recipe for disaster. If you want a masculine partner, you're gonna need to connect to your feminine energy. And being in your feminine energy is gonna mean that you're gonna prioritize family. Doesn't mean that you can't have a passion and purpose as well, but you're always gonna put family first when you're in your feminine energy. And if you're putting your passion and purpose first, you're in your masculine energy. And you need a masculine and you need a feminine. And so you can even see it, like, you know, Holly and John are really not coming together. John is kind of, he's upset, and it's interesting because he's kind of clean. He's washing his face and he takes off his shoes and everything, kind of like without thinking. He takes off his shoes and he ends up kind of doing the grounding thing where he's actually feeling his feet on the ground. And then Holly has to go out and give a speech. Again, like, they're having this moment and her work basically calls her away, and she drops everything as far as her relationship with her husband and that connection and them trying to figure things out. She drops everything and has to go to her work. Again, I realize it's her job. However, she's in her masculine at that moment. And she's got a very masculine husband who's probably not going to become the feminine in the relationship. He's a masculine man. So if she's going to be in her masculine energy, they're never going to come together. I'm not saying that she should have to be in her feminine energy if she doesn't want to, but if she wants to keep the relationship, that's what's going to have to happen, or else they're just never going to come together. So while she goes off to give her speech, that's when the bad guys, essentially the villains, all take over the building and start holding everybody hostage. They don't realize that John is in the building, so he manages to escape them. He like kicks into his cop mode, but he doesn't get his shoes on, so his feet are still, and the fact that he is barefoot throughout this whole film is such a, it's so primal. Like, it makes the movie such a, like, a primal masculine movie. And I think that grounding really is symbolic of the fact that they're up in the skyscraper. They're on the 30th floor. He's up on the roof sometimes. Sometimes he has to actually, like, jump off the side of the building and things like that. And him being barefoot is really about him being grounded. It's that very, like, primal masculine instincts. It's who he is. He's designed for this. The masculine is very much designed for that fight or flight. Like, men and women have the ability to have fight or flight, but men are designed to be in fight or flight all the time, which is why careers that have been traditionally masculine, things like police, you know, firefighters, any kind of emergency workers or things like that, military, anything, tend to be careers where there's like a lot of downtime, and then when it's go time, it's go time. Because the masculine tends to operate better in fight or flight, whereas the feminine is usually designed more for kind of that constant movement and flow. Like, for example, say working with a room full of small children or something, or having to, you know, cook a meal and having different things going at the same time, like that kind of thing. Like, they're kind of always in flow, but it's not that like stop and then go kind of thing. Whereas the masculine is more designed for the hunt, like that stop and then go. The feminine is more designed for that kind of constant flow. And the masculine needs to have his own direction. He doesn't follow other people's direction. He likes his own direction. Now, when the masculine is working with other masculine beings and they're kind of all working together, then they can coordinate direction. But the masculine is not going to want to take direction from the feminine or from somebody he doesn't know, which is one of the reasons why the masculine is not going to follow the feminine for her to follow her career path. He's going to want to follow his own path. So in so many instances, Holly is trying to embody the masculine and tell John what to do. He's not going to do that because he wants to follow his own path. So John gets grounded, and then the bad guys all come in and start holding everybody hostage. John manages to kind of slink away. They don't know that he's there. It's really interesting. He's gotten grounded. Now he's in the chaos. He says to himself quite a few times in the film when he's trying to figure out his next move, he's like, think, think, think. The masculine will be of the mind. The masculine is the mind, the feminine is the body. The masculine has the mental direction, whereas the feminine has the intuition and the heart wisdom. And we can each use our head and our heart, our masculine and our feminine, and work together. But that's one of the reasons why it's really great when you have a masculine partner and a feminine partner. Not only do you get sexual polarity, but you get the masculine that can be of the mind and the feminine that can be of the heart. And those things actually work so well together when you're in a relationship as well. It's also interesting the first time that John confronts one of the gunmen, and the guy actually says to him something about like, oh, you're a cop, cops have rules, you have to abide by the rules kind of thing. You notice John does not kill him until he absolutely has to. A healthy masculine man will have the capacity to kill, but he will be very discerning about when he uses that. He doesn't just go around killing people, hurting people, abusing people, using violence or anything just for the hell of it. He will be very, very selective about when he needs to use that. I think there's like a Jordan Peterson line I think about, that like a true man is a dangerous man that has his danger carefully under control. I don't remember the exact wording of that, but it's true. Like, it's a man who has the capacity to kill if need be, but he doesn't unless he absolutely has to. So of course the villains in this movie are very quick to kind of take people out when they need to, whereas with John, he's very selective about when he actually has to hurt someone. And John gets really frustrated too with the police, especially when the police finally come, because this movie does have a very like Alice in Wonderland feel. I know that's a weird correlation to make, but it's this very like, he's trying to get help, trying to call an emergency hotline, and they're like, it's for emergencies only. He's like, do you think I'm ordering a pizza? He's having such a difficult time, and finally he ends up connecting with Al through like this walkie-talkie on the outside, where Al's pretty much the only one on the outside that actually believes him. John can't really tell anyone who he is because he wants to protect his wife. He thinks that if these, you know, villains know that his wife is there, that they may harm her. Again, in all this panic and all this chaos, he still wants to protect his wife. Like, that protecting energy, all of them obviously, but especially his wife, like he still has that instinct within him. Even though probably telling people who he is may actually have benefited him as far as getting help on the other side, he didn't want to hurt his wife. Keeping her safe was always his top priority. And honestly, except for Al, who is really operating on his instinct and really does believe that what John is telling him is the truth, and Al's kind of the heart, if you think about it. Like, John's really of the mind. He's the thinking, he's the planning, he's the strategy. Al is kind of the heart of it. Like, he figures out that John's a cop before he tells him that he's a cop. Al is really operating on much more of his intuition, which is much more of his heart. So they're kind of working together as like the head, the heart. It doesn't necessarily have to just be in a man or woman situation. I mean, you know, if you have a masculine man who can tap into his heart, he can be the intuition, and then you can have, you know, John is operating a lot on instincts. He's operating a lot from his mind, from his direction. That said, the other cops and emergency workers on the outside are very much in their egos. Like, they're very much operating from this very, you know, egocentric. They're not really embodied in their masculine energy. They're kind of just making assumptions. They're not really making educated decisions. And it's interesting how at one point when John's watching from like the rooftop or something, or the upper levels, and he sees that these cops are about to kind of, you know, go into the building, and John knows that it's dangerous, he knows it's unsafe, and he makes a comment about like, what are these macho assholes doing? Like, he knows that these guys are just operating from their egos. They think that they're more powerful than the people on the inside, and so they're basically just going in and blindly, and not actually operating from great direction. They don't have great leadership. When you have someone who's operating in a leadership position who is only operating from ego and not from like a grounded masculine energy, that's incredibly unsafe. That's usually when you're gonna find people that end up getting themselves and the people they're leading in trouble. The interesting thing about the villains in this movie, Hans is kind of like the lead, like they think they're terrorists, but they're actually just robbers. Hans is played by Alan Rickman, which I thought was really interesting because I didn't know that he was actually in this movie because I'd never seen it before. And he's like the bad guy in this movie. And he was also kind of the bad guy in Love Actually, which I just did a review of last week. So I kind of feel like Alan Rickman might be the Grinch that stole Christmas. He seems to like ruining Christmas for people in a lot of different ways. But Hans as a villain is really interesting because he's also very much grounded in his masculine energy as well. Now his passion and purpose is actually not an honorable thing. He's being led by greed, which is very much an ego need. It's not a deeper divine purpose. However, he does have a very defined purpose and he is not thrown at all. He is very grounded. You notice that when his sort of like foot soldiers come to him with panic about the police or this going wrong or that going wrong, he's like, stay calm. We knew this was a possibility. This is a necessity. He is so calm and chill. Like he is just as grounded as John is, which is an interesting dynamic because oftentimes you will see, you know, one of the characters who's really not embodying his masculinity, where you get one that's in a very like wounded masculine energy, so to speak. And while Hans is very much operating from ego because, you know, his purpose is very much an ego need, he's still very grounded and stable in his focus and his direction. It's just not a healthy direction and it's actually quite harmful. I mean, he ends up killing people just to get money. I mean, he's operating from his ego, but it's a different way that it comes across than say like the cops outside who are basically operating from this like ego need to like jump the gun, like let's just go for it and get it over with and take care of this, and not really paying attention to what their limitations are, actually underestimating the power of the people that they're facing and not really making educated decisions, not using all the information available to them. Whereas Hans is much more grounded. He has a more defined plan. He knows his limitations. He knows his strengths. He knows how to work with the things around him in order to get the job done. And as a villain, yes, he is operating from his greed and from his ego, but he's also a very grounded character as well. And in contrast, you have Ellis, who is one of Holly's co-workers, who is really just arrogant. I mean, in fact, he's like clearly hitting on Holly. And actually when John calls Holly out on it and says he thinks that Ellis is after her, she's something like, I'm after his executive washroom or something like that. It's like, again, she's so disconnected from her feminine. She's not even noticing when the masculine is actually hitting on her because she's so focused on like work and business and achievements, and like she's so in her masculine. And Ellis is too, he's really antsy. He's arguing with Holly because they both know that it's actually John who's trying to fight with these robbers, and even though John's trying to hide his identity. And, you know, Ellis is like, your husband's gonna get us all killed. Like, he's in this ego of like, I'm not gonna let this guy, you know, be the one who saves the day. I'm not gonna let this guy be the one, I'm gonna be the one in charge. And he actually steps up and is like, you know, I negotiate with people every day. Like, he gets in such an ego. It's like an even more extreme version of like the police outside. It's this, like, I'm invincible, I can fool anybody, and he completely underestimates the people that he's dealing with. And that gets himself killed, right? Like, I mean, he literally gets himself, and John's trying to save him. He's trying to rescue him. He just goes and tries to destroy the plan because he's in this ego. Again, he's moving all the time. He can't sit still. If you notice with John, he has to kind of like, again, stop and ground himself. The masculine will usually need stillness in order to really center himself, to ground himself. Whereas Ellis is all, you know, kind of all over the place, like he can't sit still. Like, that kind of really antsy energy in a man is usually a sign that he's not fully embodying his masculine energy. Usually calmness, stillness, groundedness is much more a sign of masculine energy. It's that stillness, and it's like going when you have to go. It's very directional. The masculine is not going to make unnecessary movements. He's going to move when necessary. And I mean, I've heard some correlations to the idea that like, well, the bee comes to the flower, or like the sperm goes to the egg. Yes, the masculine does move. However, the masculine moves with intention. It's not moving all the time. It's not erratic. It's a very like move with intention. John is somebody who like stays put until he has to move, until he has to move to this next strategy, until he has to get away. Now the first one of the villains that gets killed is actually the brother of Carl, who's one of the main villains. So Carl is now out for revenge. He's out to take John out for revenge. So Carl is now in his emotions. He's less focused, and this is a great example of when the masculine does get in his emotions. It's not a bad thing. The masculine can be in his emotions. He can tap into his feminine energy, but he's not going to be as effective at actually achieving a task or getting a job done or following his passion and purpose when he's caught up in his emotions. And that's the thing that throws off Carl. Carl's in his emotions. He wants revenge for his brother's death. So he's caught up in the emotion of trying to take him down, which is one of the reasons why he has a really hard time actually defeating John, because he's not operating from his focused masculine energy. He's operating in his emotions. Now, as masculine a character as John is, he does have a connection to his feminine energy. And you see that actually when he's talking to Al through like the walkie-talkie system, and it's basically telling Al to, you know, if he doesn't survive this, to tell his wife that he was sorry and this and that. Now, I gotta be honest, I think this is because of the time period, because of this modern movie. They wanted to make this masculine guy feel like, oh, I was so wrong for not letting my wife be this powerful boss babe woman. In reality, I don't really think that he had anything to be sorry about, because at the end of the day, he was being him. And he was being his true nature. If she didn't want to align with his true nature and be in her feminine nature, they just weren't gonna work. So I don't necessarily think that he needed to apologize, but he felt like he needed to. And still feels this deep love for his wife, and he wanted Al to give her a message if he didn't survive. And he didn't want her to never know that he felt bad about what had happened between the two of them. And he's really emotional in that moment. Of course, Al is really trying to keep him through, oh, you're gonna be able to tell her yourself, like you're gonna, like he's still encouraging, like he's the masculine hype man. Like the masculine usually needs a man who will either call him out when he's wrong and also hype him up when he's not. Like that's a really important aspect of like masculine teamwork, is the idea of when something's going well, you support the masculine, you support the other masculine being. When something's going wrong or he's doing something wrong, you're not afraid to call him out. And you know, Al is basically like encouraging him, like trying to hype him up, like, hey, we're gonna get through this, we're gonna make it through. In that moment, John is kind of tapped into his emotions. He's really connecting. He's realizing what would happen if he didn't survive, what would happen to his wife, that there would be things that he never said to her and things like that. Like that's his feminine emotions coming through. So the fact that he is such a masculine man and has such an amazing connection to his masculine energy, it's so primal. I mean, again, I love the fact that he was barefoot throughout this whole movie, because it just made it so primal. Like it was his natural masculine instincts, his natural masculine energy that were leading him through this whole movie. But he clearly does have a healthy connection to his feminine energy that he can tap into at moments when he feels like he needs to. So yeah, John McClane, such a masculine character. It's not about that he saved all these people, but he was able to do that because of the masculine energy he embodied. And I think, you know, if you're a masculine man and you're watching this movie, or you're a man who wants to learn to tap into more of your masculine energy, it's not about doing the specific things that he did. It's about embodying the energy of that. You know, maybe grounding. I mean, maybe grounding would be a good thing to do. You know, if you feel yourself in a lot of erratic energy, then grounding yourself. If you don't feel like you have a passion and purpose, that's like tip number one. Find a passion and purpose. Find the thing that you really are passionate about over everything else. Make sure that it's a divine purpose. It's not just for some kind of ego need or arrogance or something like that. It's your divine purpose. Like find that thing that you are truly passionate about, that you are actually bringing to the world. And then again, grounding yourself, being very grounded in that energy. You don't have to walk around barefoot all the time, but taking some time to actually connect to the earth so you're not all up in the clouds. Focusing on, you know, not being so erratic. Focus on keeping yourself very centered. Meditation is great for that. Like those are some things that can really help you tap into your masculine energy. I'm not a masculine energy coach, so I would highly recommend, if you are a man who's watching this and you want to tap more into your masculine energy, find some men's groups. I'd be more than happy to give you some recommendations if you're interested. But finding a great group of men and masculine support is amazing for that. If you're a woman watching this, honestly, these are some of the qualities that you want to look for in a masculine partner. You want to look for a man who has the capability to be grounded. He's not up in the air and erratic. A man who has a passion and purpose. That I know it can be really difficult to know that his passion and purpose will always come first. and I dive into this more in my Tom and Giselle breakdown and in some other videos, like I know that can be difficult because as a feminine, you're gonna yearn to be more important to him than his passion and purpose. But at the end of the day, as a feminine woman, if you had a man who put you first and didn't put his passion and purpose first, you probably would lose respect for him. There is nothing sexier to a feminine woman than seeing a masculine man fully living his passion and purpose. It is the sexiest thing you will ever see. So I'm not saying that men can't have, you know, an amazing love life with their wife. They should prioritize love and family. They should make that an important part of their life. But the masculine will always choose a feminine partner that is in support of his highest purpose. And if he meets a feminine partner who's actually trying to take him away from his purpose, it's not gonna work. Even if he does follow her, he's gonna end up resenting her. I know that this movie had like several sequels. I don't know where they go with this as far as the movie goes. I know that, you know, John and Holly had this, you know, beautiful moment at the end and everything, and it was kind of implied that they were gonna get back together. In reality, I mean, unless some changes happen, they're always gonna be butting heads. Like, she is so much in her masculine. I find it hard to believe that she would ever really be able to soften into her feminine energy enough in order to make that relationship work. I don't know. I don't really know where they take this storyline or where it goes. Again, I've only seen this movie once and I haven't seen any of the other movies. So in real life, the two masculines in a relationship, not gonna work. I know in Hollywood sometimes they can have these moments where it's like, oh hey, she can be in her masculine and still have the masculine husband, but in real life, it doesn't really work that way. And also Carl in this movie, it really kills me because he is also in The Money Pit. I've never seen him in any other movie. He's like a famous ballet dancer or something. And The Money Pit was one of my favorite movies growing up, and I feel like that would be kind of a fun movie to do a breakdown of, so let me know if you want to see that. So this concludes this season's holiday film breakdowns. I have breakdowns of White Christmas and It's a Wonderful Life from last holiday season. And I've also done breakdowns this year of National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation and of Love Actually. So if you're planning on watching some holiday movies, watch my breakdowns, and then when you watch the movie, see if you can pick up on some of the things that I mentioned in the movie. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please give it a big thumbs up and be sure you subscribe to my channel. If you have any thoughts on this movie, any other film recommendations, or anything, let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you and I love your suggestions. If you're a woman who wants to connect to her feminine energy, I have online courses, details in the description box below, along with links to all my social media accounts. I hope you have a fabulous and safe holiday season, a very Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you join me next time.